What's more nerve-wracking, pulling into the water box or sending a big budget number?
Sending a big budget number. 100%. It's shaken, yes. Yes.
Welcome to the Automotive Advantage. Grow your business and get smarter in just 1 hour.
Do it.
Welcome back to the Automotive Advantage. We had a big one today, Justin. Are you ready? You getting excited? You want to go drag racing today?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Ida Zetterström joins us. Ida is 31 years old. She's from Sweden. She is an NHRA Top Fuel driver. She is coming off the greatest race weekend of her life. And I'm going to argue she is one of the most interesting humans on the face of the planet right now. Unbelievable talent. Welcome to the Automotive Advantage.
Thank you so much for that intro. Yeah, it was a great weekend. We've had some fantastic weekends over in Europe, but definitely the best we've had so far in NHRA.
Man, did you watch it, Justin? Were you watching?
No. I was gonna lie and say that I did watch it, but we're truthful on this podcast, so I didn't want to do that. I did see 000 Light though. Yeah,
that was that cut it a little close, but we got a win on that one.
Yeah. No, I don't. I'm not going to say it on the pod, but I don't watch a lot of NHRA drag racing, to be honest. I kind of just catch it on the gram after the fact. So sorry to everyone at the NHRA.
I'm going to have to get you out to a race then so you can see it.
Oh, yeah. Well, in person, it's a whole different vibe. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the first time photographing an NHRA race is one of the craziest experiences ever. Like the whole baptism by, nitro is absolutely true. But yeah, just the sheer impact and the force of everything is unbelievable. On TV, it is exciting, but it's not. If you haven't been,
If you haven't been, I don't think you can really grasp it when you watch it on TV. If you've been and you know the feeling and you know the excitement, I think you enjoy it a whole lot more. So I feel like everybody that watches it on TV that still haven't gone to a race, you just gotta go to a race. It's gonna elevate the whole experience so much.
Especially if you go to something like Indy. I mean, right, US Nats is just...
There's so many good ones, but obviously Indy is one of those really great one, really big ones. And if you haven't been before and you go to one where you have some nitrons, that's always really cool when you get to see, the header flames in the dark and going 330 plus miles per hour down the track, and it's pitch black out. That always makes it a little bit extra.
Yeah, and 4-wide, right? What's a 4-wide like?
Well, a 4-wide in the race car, not bad. A 4-wide watching, I think it's kind of hard. I remember standing behind, teammates' cars and so on, watching, and you look up and you still can't really grasp who ran what and see everything at the same time. But when you're in the car, I don't mind it at all. It's just a lot to keep track at when you're behind the car sitting there.
So Ida, you licensed in Europe and you won in Europe in Top Fuel, and then the natural progression has come to the United States. We're not big into backgrounds on the show. We're really into the business side of this, which we can't wait to break down what your business looks like around Top Fuel. But set the stage for what it takes for you to go racing Top Fuel in the United States.
Well, it started many years ago. Not to go too far back on background, but obviously I started racing when I was 8, so I've been in racing for a long time. I wanted to go race Top Fuel when I was 18. That was not an option. When you look at it, I don't come from money. I don't have those connections. Getting into a Top Fuel car at 18 was impossible. It was not something that would happen for me. But I still wanted to race at the highest level I could. So I spent years working, making money, setting money aside, trying to get into a class that I could afford. And I eventually started racing bikes. And when I started racing bikes, that's when the business side of racing started for me. Because that's when I had to figure out how to find sponsors to go racing. Because even though I set aside money, I was working as an electrician at the time. I didn't get enough money to kind of put in to run the racing on the level I wanted to. So I knew I needed sponsors, and started up obviously social media channels, started sharing my background, started sharing the behind the scenes, building a brand, going to as many races as we could in the beginning, building a good race bike, having, a strong foundation with that, and then started finding brands to kind of align myself with. And I know right now with Top Fuel, it's on a complete different level than it was when I raced the Super Street bike. But a lot of the partners that I had when I went into the Top Fuel licensing in 21 was partners that I had built when I was racing the bike and building my brand over there, and found those connections over there, those B2B opportunities with those companies, and kind of just started that whole business side of racing. And then it progressed, and at a point where we had won 2 championships in Super Street Bike, I knew Top Fuel was always the end goal for me, but it was so far out of reach when I started that I had to kind of build and keep building that slowly. And in 2021, we had seen a previous season during COVID where we could only compete in Finland. We were running all the races we could in Finland because at the time I was living on an island that was technically Finnish, and we could not leave the country. So we could only race over there. So with the sponsors we made the season over there work, and we were able to secure a championship over there. And I started the conversations with the Top Fuel team that I eventually licensed with in 21, saying that as soon as they opened up the borders, I had enough partners with me to be able to fund like a licensing process and start working on partners for full time in Top Fuel. Because you don't go and find sponsors for Top Fuel saying I'm going to race Top Fuel and they say, oh great, when did you license? Now I'm going to get that done later. Like you got to do the licensing process first. So step 1 on the Top Fuel journey was kind of finding enough partners to be able to license. And then once the license was done, try and approach partners for running a full season. So that's kind of how it started.
I mean, yeah, the economics of this are insane, right? And I'm sure as an 18-year-old, just the idea of going and running Top Fuel, whatever that number started as is probably 80x that now. But like, give me a breakdown for someone at home that's like, all right, okay, so she starts in bikes. What does a bike season cost you? What are the sponsors on board for? Like, how does that work at that level? And then maybe we can scale up from there.
So basically, on the bike side, it depends a little bit on how many races you're running and what series. We were running the Scandinavian series, or Nordic series that it was called, which was one of the strongest ones that you could compete in at that time. And we were also running selective races in the European Championship to get, more seat time, more races. We could see, 38 bikes enter to some of these races. So it was a big bike class, a really healthy class at that time. About 50 to 60,000 a year we could spend on running a class like that, which is not a lot if you compare to what it costs to run Top Fuel, but it's not something. Working as an electrician, you can't do that out of your own pocket if you don't have any other income to pay for that, basically. So I did put a lot of my own money into it, but I also needed partners to be able to make it happen. The class I was racing, it was called Super Street Bike, 750 horsepower, no wheelie bar bikes, street tires, runs 680s at 215 miles per hour. That class is a pro class in Europe. So over here, when you look at the pro classes in NHRA, Pro Stock Bike is the pro bike class. But over there, that was one of the pro classes in Europe. So it was one of the classes that we weren't professional racers because obviously we still had other professions. Like we still worked on the side of it. Everybody did it as their hobby, but it was kind of the highest level you can get within the bike scene or still be called a professional class. So that was why wasn't the only reason why it was interesting to me. There was also, we have Pro Stock Bike over there as well that is also a professional class, but I loved how that class was progressing. It was high energy, we did popped wheelies down the track, going 200 miles per hour, popping high wheelies. It was the class that people didn't leave the stands for because it was kind of, we call it the pro mod of the bike class. It was wild and crazy, fun to watch, and it was progressed quickly, and it was a lot of entries. Like it was a really healthy class. So it got a lot of attention, a lot of media attention, great for sponsors, and it was a great mix of tuner, rider, and engine builder. Basically, you need to have a good engine program, a good bike, a good tuner, and a good driver. And I loved that combo. So that's kind of why we pivoted towards that class. And one of my things when I came into it, I said I was going to have the best looking bike, I was going to have the coolest helmet, and we're going to make a big splash when we get into it, because that's how we were approaching brands. We couldn't just be there and kind of be the slowest in the class and not stand out. So we made sure we stood out. I was also the only girl racing it, so that kind of stood out by itself, but we didn't want that to be the cause of it either. We wanted to really have a great professional looking race team when we got out there. And I think that helped us a lot when we kind of took the step from that over to Top Fuel. Running Top Fuel in Europe, a lot cheaper than running Top Fuel in America. So basically in Europe, depending on how many races you make, there's right now the season is very short. When I raced, we had about 5 races in our championship. We had 1 race that was an extra add-on race that usually had a lot of entries. So 6 plain races and 2 kind of test events or show events. We went there as the show cars, kind of like Night on the Fire or something similar that we have over here in America. But 8 times a year was basically how many times I could get my car out. And depending on your budget, depending on how you run your race teams, in Europe, you can run them between $100,000 and $200,000 a year, a Top Fuel team. And that is basically what it costs to run 1 race over here in America. So that's the difference. So for me to be able to find partners to swing a few seasons for Top Fuel in Europe was a lot easier than it is to do it over here. Over there, nobody was paid. Everybody took time out of their work and they came there because they loved it. We slept on air mattresses in the trailers, or you had, your own camper with you. We used a lot of used parts. A lot of the teams in Europe, they buy parts from the teams over here and utilize that. And that obviously takes your budget down a little bit. And yeah, it's a whole other world. It's a lot cheaper over there, but that was not where I wanted to end it. We won the championship in 2023. And by that time I had already worked several years on trying to make it over here to America.
I understand. Okay, so motorcycle, 60 grand a year. You're probably getting 10 or 20 sponsors. They don't need to come on for that much money. That works. I think people can make sense of that. Plus, they're probably selling parts for those types of bikes, and right, that's probably easier. Yeah. And then now you have to make this jump from that even to 200 a year is kind of a crazy step. And you have to probably get different sponsors, right? Because people aren't buying Top Fuel parts really, but they're buying engine components and stuff like that. So how did your approach change from the bike, where it's probably more easy for a sponsor to understand what's going on, to like a little bigger numbers? What was the change in your approach there?
I think the approach was still the same. It was just in a bigger scale. I tried to do a lot of other stuff and not just let the bike racing or the Top Fuel racing be like my only leg to stand on, or the only thing I could kind of sell to these brands. Obviously, building a strong social media presence, I knew right away that helped. The more we started working on that, we got a really loyal fan base. So we noticed that was something that we had working for us. In Europe, there's no TV time. There's no one that, markets the actual drivers. Over here, obviously, NHRA is marketing their drivers, and there's a whole lot more media outlets over here that market. And then you have the show is on Fox. In Europe, we don't have that. We have a live stream at certain events, but the live stream never actually shows the driver. It only shows the cars that go down track, and they hear our name, but they never see our faces. They don't really know who we are. So it was on you to market yourself and build your own brand. So that was something that I worked a lot on, so that I couldn't just sell a logo on a car on track, because that is not... Back in the day, that was what you sold. You sold the logo on a car and you sold the TV time, basically. That is kind of out the window a long time ago. So it has to be more on the B2B side, and obviously on the marketing in other channels. So some of it was the social media part. And with certain brands, we also had a lot of B2B deals. That was what I kind of pivoted to very early. Even when we were racing the bike, I had brands that were not in the automotive aftermarket industry. For example, I had a brand that we worked with quite strongly. They're making toilets for RVs and like summer houses. And they're called Cinderella, and everything turns to ashes. So you don't have to go and empty your trailer, RV, bathroom, whatever. Like, it just turns to ashes and you throw it away. And people loved it because nobody wants to deal with that, So what we did with them was we brought like their biggest customers to a race once a year. And we took care of them in our hospitality. We showed them the behind the scenes of the racing. We showed them, gave them a VIP experience that they couldn't really buy anywhere else. And by the end of that, their company could offer them, for example, hey, if you put in your orders for this year, we're going to give you a discount of X amount. And they got a lot of orders. And it was a way for them to take care of their sponsors, but it was also a way for them to kind of offer them something that was different from what they did with all the other they work with. So working on the hospitality side and the B2B side was a strength even before we went into Top Fuel. So we kind of just elevated that and offered more of that, being able to get more of companies to come to our hospitality, bring their customers. We could offer them those kind of events, but also bring in other companies we had to connect the B2B together. Like when I raced in Top Fuel in 2023, two of our biggest sponsors were Edelbrock and KW Parts. And KW Parts is the main importer of American automotive parts in Europe. And obviously, Edelbrock is a perfect fit for that. So we kind of worked hard on the B2B side there, where we could make sure that they could work together. And KW both have a B2B side, where they sell to dealers across Europe, and a B2C side, where they can also sell to end consumers. So we worked on the B2B side together to get their components and so on into all these dealers. And then we worked heavily on marketing the B2C side through my racing program to kind of show that we can get those products out there and kind of build that brand in Europe. So that's kind of where I went more. Obviously, the marketing side and the social media is still very important, and I work a lot on that. But it was more on the B2B side where we could make those contracts bigger because it's more value back for the customer. So long story short, that's kind of my pivot, I did that from the beginning, but we grew it bigger and bigger, and we're able to bring both companies that were not in the aftermarket industry and also a lot of the automotive aftermarket industry into it and get the return on investment that they need to put that money into my race program.
It strikes me how you're describing a go-to-market strategy for multiple companies and multiple tiers. Like, that's a very advanced racer. We hadn't heard that 20, 30 years ago. It was, we put stickers on cars and they paid me money for it. So, what example do you have now of that? Like, what companies are you working with, or what's hot on the table that you want to put together that you think you can score a bigger deal than just airtime and exposure? But what are you putting together? I'm sure you got some stuff cooking.
We have some stuff we're working on that I can't really name brands, obviously. A lot of things we are working with is the automotive aftermarket industry, but they're already in racing. And something for me that has been very important, and probably why it takes a little longer to get this done, is that I'm trying to bring in companies that aren't already in racing. Because we see a lot of this when there's a new racer coming in or so on, and they want to build their team, they want to stay out there for a long time. And what you're trying to do is, poach a little bit of everybody else's sponsors that are already out here. And I don't think that that's a long-term solution, and that is not what you want to do. You're going to end up pissing off people, and you're also going to end up not having enough of what you need. And I think that there's a lot of untapped market in drag racing for companies that are not in here anymore. It could be, or not in here yet. I mean, it could be companies that have spent money in other motorsport industries or that haven't been in motorsport at all. Something that I've noticed a lot lately is when you talk to some of these companies that might have spent money in other forms of motorsport in the past, they haven't understood how good the open pit and the trackside hospitality is in drag racing. They might have invested in other forms of motorsport, and you have had a suite where you can take care of your sponsors, or you have had X amount of tickets per year or so on, and that's kind of what they've been utilizing. Or even if you have trackside access, you can get there, but during the races, you can't really access the drivers or the teams or whatever it might be. And a strong suit we have is obviously the hospitality is right next to the race team. Like, you can bring your customers or your best employees or your new companies that you want to work with, B2B connections, whatever it might be. And you can sit like right next to where the guys are tearing apart a 12,000 horsepower Top Fuel engine. And I can literally take one of the pistons that came out of the car and sign it for the guy that you brought, and I can give it to him, and I can personally come and sit there and have lunch with you. And we have, meeting rooms where if you guys want to sit down and discuss a contract or whatever, we can have you go in there and we can close the door, and you can have kind of a one-stop shop where it's not just watching the race, but you can get kind of that experience. And that's something I'm trying to show these brands, that might be in other forms of sport, and they're saying, yeah, we were close to the dugout once. It's like, no, you're like in it when you're here. Like this is where it happens. So I'm trying to look outside of the automotive industry just to find something that can come into the sport, see the value. We can really show the B2B side where we can give them return on investment, because if they put money in this, they need to get more back than they put in, obviously. Otherwise, you can put it in the bank and wait for interest. So that's kind of the whole idea with it. And we have some other brands that we are working with right now that we know that if we can put it together and they can work together, it's going to be a really strong contract for everybody involved, where basically both of these companies are making a lot of money, and the amount of money they're spending on the marketing side of us will be just a small piece of what they're all gonna get out of it. But it's very hard to talk about what type of brands it is, but I think that's also why it's taken me longer than I wish it would, because it's easier to show a company that has a competitor in drag racing. Hey, this is what this company is doing right now. You should do the same thing. But if we can get something in there that's not already in the sport, I think it's going to elevate the sport even more, and we're going to be able to give even more back to them. So we'll see.
I mean, it seems like it would be hard to drive a Top Fuel dragster, but it seems like it's way harder to run the business of a Top Fuel dragster team. 18-year-old you, when you're like, I want to go do this, did you even consider that any of that was going to be the real day-to-day of this?
I did not. I did not understand that. Obviously, like I said, I worked as an electrician for several years, and then luckily I ended up in management, and I think that helped me a lot, because managing a business, no matter if it's a race team or if it's an electrical plumbing company, you kind of have the same mindset of how you work with money and how you get value out of what you're doing. I also got involved quite a bit on the marketing side of that company, and my old boss, obviously, I got to learn a lot from him, and also the leadership group that I was working with. I was very young at the time. I think I was 23, 24 when I started in that position, and everybody was obviously older than me and had done it a lot longer, which meant that I got to learn a lot. And I think that helped me a lot in starting up. Obviously, when I did the bike stuff, it was still on a lower level, and like you said, it was less money. A lot of the things that we did there, we, for example, worked with Turbo, Wastegate, the blow-off valve manufacturer, and they had done turbos for cars for years, but they didn't really have a specific turbo for a bike. So we developed one kind of together. They sent one to us, we dynoed, we gave feedback, we got new housings back, or they made different changes to it. We ran it, we won a championship with it, we won, we ran at the time it was the second quickest pass ever in history with that turbocharger. And we were the first one and the only one at the time that had one, and now it's kind of one of the standard ones that people use. So we were able to do a lot of that kind of stuff with the companies that were in our industry. And then when I moved over to Top Fuel, couldn't bring a turbo sponsor with me into Top Fuel. That was a little hard. So like some of these companies that I had worked together closely for years, we weren't able to, we could still do things with them on the side, because I had a lot of other projects on the side where we had cars and other bikes and such. But I had to find new companies. We went into Top Fuel, and that's when I had to start getting more into this and kind of utilize that business side even more than I had done while racing the bikes. And that's also when I quit my job and started my own company, because I noticed that it was hard to be manager level on one side and then also do this on the other side. So I started my own company, and I worked obviously not just for my race stuff, because that would not pay the bills. So I also picked up other work on the side, and I did marketing for a lot of other companies and some race teams. Worked in Porsche Spring Challenge as a mechanic for a little bit, and just did other stuff to try and pay the bills and then do the rest with the racing. But that was I'm very happy that I had to learn all of that kind of the hard way. I didn't go to school and studied either marketing or business, but learning this way I think it's what set me up to be able to come over to America too, because there's no one out here that's just looking for a driver. Honestly, it isn't. It's not like other forms of motorsport when you hire a driver and then someone else goes and finds the money and then you drive, and it just isn't like that. And I know when I came over here, one of the things that me and Joe talked about, Joe Maynard, before we signed to come over and race together, was the business side. He's a businessman. He's ran several businesses throughout his life, and he was interested in this. He wanted to see how we could bring companies in that hasn't already been in drag racing, and he says he wants to leave the sport better than he was when he came into it, and he wants to be there when we win our first championship in America, and he wants to work this way with partners. And it was very important for me to be able to bring the partners I already had over here and make sure they had a good home with me over here. And that was his mindset too. So I think if I wouldn't have had the business side of it or the business mindset, I don't think me and Joe would have clicked the same way as we did when we met the first time.
Yeah, you see so much of that, young kids or now sim racers or whatever, they just think, oh, I just have to be the fastest, right? And it's like, no.
Yes.
No, you do have to be the fastest. That's actually the requirement.
Yeah.
Now to succeed, you have to do all the rest of this stuff, right?
Yes.
And then you talk about mentorship when you were an electrician, right? But I'm sure now you're in a very competitive thing where people aren't going to tell you how they're getting sponsors and what they're doing. Yeah. So what was that side of it like? How big of a dark art is this? Because you're really just dealing with all your competitors now, right?
Yeah. No, it's actually really hard. In Europe, I had always obviously been there for so many years, and my dad had an automotive repair shop growing up, and built a lot of engines and dynoed engines, and we've been at the track a lot. So I built my own kind of network of connections just through growing up around motorsports. So when I had an idea for a company, for example, that, hey, I think that if we do this with this company, we're going to be able to make them money, and I wanted to pitch that to them, I already knew kind of which way to go. I could think, I know what this company is based. I think I might know someone that knows someone at the company. You can kind of start digging that way so you can meet the right connection, because you don't send an email to an info email and hope that you're going to get a sponsor. That's not how it works. Like you got to find the right person to talk to and sit down there and kind of explain to them, like, I think you have this problem and this is how I can help you with it. This is how we can make a solution for it. Not, hey, this is how you're going to give me money. It's, this is how I'm going to make you money. But you got to have the right person. And in Europe, I had an easier way to know how to get to those people so I could present this. And a lot of times when you did that, they looked at it and they ran the numbers and they're like, this is a good business idea. Let's do this. Over here, I don't have those connections at all, because I'm not from here. I didn't grow up here. I don't have anyone to call. I don't know how to reach these people, especially when it comes to the outside of the automotive industry and the automotive aftermarket industry. I don't have a lot of connections there at all. And that's been really hard. And even, like you said, my competitors, they don't want to share their connections. They don't want to, help with any of that. And my race team, fantastic couple with Joe and PJ, and they started this race team, but they have not been in drag racing their whole life. So it's different if you're on a team that have been 40 years in drag racing and you have that name when you're calling and people know, hey, yeah, I worked with that team, back in the day, or they know someone. They're kind of new at this too. It's a new world for them on the business side, and I think that's been hard for all of us, trying to find those right people and who do you talk to. And obviously there are people out here that you can pay to try and go and get money, but that I don't know how well that works. I think everybody out there has tried it at some point, but I've noticed myself that if I personally can sit down and explain how we're doing things and, be part of that discussion and part of building those contracts and making sure that we deliver on what we talked about, that's the contracts that stay for years and years and end, because you have that personal connection. And I think it's kind of risky to just giving it to someone that has no idea about, what I can do on my background or what we're actually selling. So it's tricky for sure.
What's the perfect budget to run Top Fuel full time? What's that number? And then how much does a driver make off of that? Just so people understand what we're talking about.
It's a wide variation. So if you ask some teams, they're going to say 5 million. A lot of teams says 4 million. 3.5 million is a normal operating cost. Like that is normally, if you look at the race team itself, is 3 million. A lot of people that talk about 4, then it's also included, the hospitality and what it takes to run the hospitality and having those rigs and all that. But around 3.5 million is a normal number. Most drivers out here aren't paid. A lot of the drivers, you drive, but you're not really paid to do that. You have a work on the outside of drag racing. I have a visa. I'm not allowed to earn a cent outside of drag racing, so I'm not an American citizen. I am here for JCM racing, and I can't cash in on anything else than driving that race car. Obviously, I can do a lot of work. I'm just not allowed to get paid for it. So I work for the race team full time and do more than just driving. So for me, it's a little different because I work on obviously this, like finding money, marketing, social media, booking our guys' travel, and doing a lot of other stuff. So for me, it's I have a normal salary, same as the crew guys, basically on a race car. But some drivers that race can earn anything from 80,000 to 200,000 a year, and it depends a little bit on how big your sponsors are. I mean, some drivers that own their own team and have a lot of sponsors can probably cash out on 300,000 a year if they want to, if they have enough money for it. But normally a driver out here has a normal salary somewhere between 80 and 100,000 is probably a normal driver salary. For me, I don't drive full time, so I don't have a full-time driver salary, but I work for the race team, so I have a salary from the race team. So it's a little different.
What an incredible amount of effort.
Yeah, I'm thinking this, like, what a tough way to make a...
Yeah, I mean, it's big money, right? 100 grand, 200 grand, it's big money, but still, you're running a race team, you're doing all the competitive things that it takes to win, and then you're getting sponsors and finding sponsors, doing all that stuff, and running your own social media, and then you got the hospitality, and then you got to make everyone happy, and then you got to show returns on this thing. Like, it's a huge effort.
Yeah, and then when you're looking at drivers that make over 100,000 a year, you can probably, I can only think of maybe 3 or 4 drivers out there that would do that. So that is not something that's normal. And I know from back in the day that some drivers made up to 200,000 a year, but that was when it had sponsorship contracts that were kind of included in getting money for the driver as well. But normally out here, you have enough to for your day to day, but it's not something you get rich on for sure.
Sounds like running a podcast, kind of.
I don't think anything off this thing.
We all choose the wrong occupation. Yeah.
No one at this table is making money today. Okay, cool, good.
But we love what we're doing, yes.
Talk about, you've looked at other sanctioning bodies. This is really interesting to me, but talk about NHRA as a business. What do you see as an employee of NHRA in a secondary role? Are they doing enough for drivers? Would you like them to do more? Should they be promoting you more? Have they been great? Give us a feel of how the sanctioning bodies helped you.
I think NHRA, so I'm not hired by NHRA, but obviously I work with NHRA a lot now when I do also the announcing. Since I don't have enough money to run a full season on the races I have not been racing at, I have done the announcing. So I get to see it from a little bit of a different perspective too. I feel like NHRA, we have talked about this a lot for many years. You market drag racing as the fastest motorsport. It's fast, it's loud, it's cool, it's kind of it's an action sport, obviously, and it's something that people go to because they love the thrill of speed and the sound of it. But I think we're kind of in a pivot where we're marketing the drivers a little more, which I like to see because people like personality. It's the same when you start looking at social media. If you look at the accounts that only market the car or the race team themselves, there's some of them that work really well. But when you can take the personality and bring it into your brand and show, more of the driver itself and more of what makes us good or bad, or, if you're rooting for a driver, you don't root for it because, I like their pink car or I like their black car. Like you root for them because there's something with the driver that you kind of pivot towards. Maybe there's something you can see yourself in, or background story, or whatever it is. But that's the stories that NHRA's got to tell. And I think that right now they're working hard at it. There's a documentary in the making that will be coming out next year that really highlights the drivers, not just NHRA as a whole. It's obviously their 75th anniversary next year, and it's kind of a tribute to Wally Parks, but it highlights the drivers. And that's what I'm very interested to see when that comes out, what that's going to do to the sport, because I think it's something that's been missing. I mean, when we look at Formula One, for example. Formula One has been so big in Europe for so many years. Obviously, I come from Europe. Nobody knew what drag racing was, but everybody knew what Formula One was. But it hasn't really been like that here in America. I mean, if you talked about Formula One here 10 years ago, nobody really cared if you weren't like a die-hard Formula One fan. But now all of a sudden, everybody knows who Max Verstappen and everybody is in Formula One because of the Drive to Survive series that came out. And that series, of course, it showed, the crashes and the thrills of F1, but it was a story of the drivers and it was a story of the teams. So I think that is something that is really great that NHRA is working on right now. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with that. But yeah, I think for me, obviously, I'm not a full-time driver still. So it is hard for them to market me the same way as they market a Antron Brown or a Tony Stewart that is out there competing for a championship. But I do feel like they have been very inclusive in. I've done a lot of media days and I've done a lot of things together with NHRA, and they're actually this year working with a company called Deep Blue Group that are working with the female athletes, not just in motorsports, but we're actually the first motorsport they're working together with, but they're working a lot on, the NFL, NBA, like a lot of the soccer players, a lot on that side, and bringing marketing money into that. And when NHRA partnered with them and showed that, in NHRA, nobody actually cares if you're a guy or a girl. Like the car doesn't care, the teams doesn't care, like there's nobody who cares. We race on the same and equal, it's the same equal playing field for all of us. And that is something that they're trying to highlight, saying, if you really want to come out here and market and spend money on women that are great at the sport they're doing, come and do it in drag racing. Like, we're not just out here competing. We're not just out here, filling a field. Like, there's female champions. The fastest person in the world is a female. Like there's nothing that separates us from the guys out there. So I think that them doing that is a big step in the right direction too, because they're kind of opening a door that those companies that they work with, and they work with not the automotive brands. They work with, the Nikes and the, big kind of brands that are in other forms of sport but have never touched motorsport in that way. And I wish, or I hope that that's going to open some doors for those brands to see what we're doing. Because obviously I can be there and knock on every door, but if we don't have a connection, or if we don't have anybody that kind of shines a light on what we're doing, we might not reach them. But with NHRA doing that this year and having kind of a company like that, helping, showing what we're doing in NHRA, and not making it out to be, hey, there's girls here, look at them. Like, just be like, hey, there's some badass athletes out here that are doing a great job. You should notice. So I think there's still ways to go, but I think they're doing a good job right now of trying to highlight those personalities and those drivers and kind of finding a way for some new money to come into the sport.
That's an awesome feedback. That's not the feedback you hear on the internet every day, is it? That NHRA has all these progressive programs going. I mean, that's a great summary of what's going on.
But it's funny because we've talked about this a bunch. Like, drag racing is the OG inclusive sport. Yeah, like, you go to the drag strip, nobody cares about anything. It's just, is your car cool? Yeah. Are you fun to race with? Yeah. Right? That was it from day one. Yeah. Every drag strip I've ever been to, very inclusive place to be. But it is interesting, I guess I've never really thought about it, that we don't have a lot of non-endemic sponsors in the sport yet. Yeah. Formula One, it's like, you can look on the side of a car, I'm like, I haven't heard of any of these companies before, So talk to me a little bit more about getting those non-endemics, getting a Nike, getting an Under Armour. Like, there's huge space here for them. What do they need to know if they end up watching this podcast and they're like, okay, well, maybe we do want to get in on this? What's the pitch to those guys?
That's a great question. Yeah. So one thing that I feel like, and I mean, I'm working on that, but I think we all need to get better at it, is also show our world outside of drag racing. I mean, that's how my social media grows so much, that I was able to show, what I'm doing outside, how I'm working out in the gym, how I'm traveling, how I'm, doing things at home to get ready to go racing. Because when we are only showing the action photos from the track, or a photo of us, suiting up, and that's everything we're kind of promoting, and that's also what these brands are seeing on TV, it might be really hard for them to see how they fit in. But when we are getting better at showing, that we're also people that use all of these products, I mean, me going to the gym, I would love a sponsor that was more into sports or gym or whatever it might be, you know, athletic wear or something, because it's something I use on a daily and it's something I can market without it being, it's not a hard product for me to market. And we also have a lot of other needs on the track that these brands probably don't think about. But like, for example, we go out there and we race for 3 days straight. And every time we take our helmet off, it's like, you know, sweaty and disgusting. I would love like a dry shampoo sponsor. That would be awesome. Like, you know, but it's just, we haven't really showed them that there's space for stuff like that. But if we build the stories and we can show more of like our personality and what we're doing, trackside or away from the track, I think we open those doors a little bit more, because then it's not strange that we're marketing it both in our social media and on track, because it will I feel like everything you're doing, it can't be one or the other. It can't be just a logo on the race car and then you don't do anything more. Everything you're doing has to be integrated into your life so you can actually show that this is a company I believe in and this is a product I believe in. And that's another thing. I mean, I've been out here now for a year and a half trying to find money to go racing full time. I have had offers for big money, but it's companies I don't want to align myself with, companies that don't fit what I stand for or fit with what we're trying to do. And it's really hard to say no to money. You know, someone is dangling something in front of you and you know, if I take this, it's going to be the easy route and we are set for racing a year or two. But it's not a brand I want to represent. And when you've spent, you know, 15 years of your life now just building your brand and making sure that everything I align myself with is something I believe in and it fits my brand, it's also an easy sell for those brands. Because when I promote something, even if it's not something that I'm sponsored by, it could be something as simple as a drink, you know, something that you like to drink at race day, just a non-alcoholic drink, you know. All of a sudden, people are coming up to me and they're saying, oh, I bought that, or my wife liked that, or she drinks that. Like, they see what we're doing, even when it's not a sponsored product. And that's why it's so important for me that everything that I kind of have around me and that we align ourselves with is right, because these people that are watching, they're gonna buy it. Like, that's how it is. And I think also with the open pit in drag racing and the fact that the fans can actually come up close and meet us, they might have talked to us online for years or whatever. They come up and they can actually meet you and they can have a conversation. It makes them very loyal. So what I promote, a lot of times they buy that. And then we got to make sure that that's good for the people that are watching. So.
All right, Lulu, you heard it here.
Yes.
That's where we're going? You want an aloe or where are we at? Okay.
I would love me a Lulu sponsorship. That would be so good. A Poppy sponsorship would be great too. I've been drinking a lot of those.
I'm still on Lululemon, but former life, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know. I was in a conversation recently with someone about something else, and I was just like, I think just in general for me and most people, they just don't think big enough. Right? People just think very like, oh, well, okay, they're doing this. I could do a equal thing to that and I could just leave it there. It's so refreshing to hear like, no, we should have all these other things, you know. Who would have thought that Celsius would become like the biggest podcast sponsor in the world? Celsius, hit us up. But like, they're so, in the podcast space, there's a lot of non-endemic things going on. Absolutely. And in motorsports, it just continues to be the same kind of thing over and over again. So it'd be so refreshing to see. And
the other thing there is also, obviously, the people that watch the races on TV and go to the races, they use these products. You know, they're people just like us that will use all those products. Not all of these people will use the turbochargers that we market. It's a great product, absolutely, and it's great for a very niche market that are doing the builds and that are going racing. But when we get those kind of products in that everybody could use in their everyday life, I feel like we open it up so much wider. So if we're already getting all this return on investment for these, you know, brands that are in a very niche market, if we can open it up for a company like that and we can actually reach this wide, it would, I can't see how it would not work in drag racing when they're spending millions and millions in other sports where we have bigger TV numbers, bigger social media numbers, and a very, very loyal fan base, and we're reaching the right crowd. And even when it comes to certain brands that, something I noticed was when I look at my social media stats and so on, about 80% is male. So obviously I haven't pivoted all too much towards the brands that are only female products, or it's different if it's a company like Lulu or Under Armour that have both. You kind of reach both demographics. But something I noticed a lot in the last year is when I do use something that's more of a women's product, I get so many messages from guys saying, I bought that for my girlfriend and she loves it. Or, hey, my wife uses that. Or, hey, it happens so much. People come up to me at the races too and they said, you know that you showed before? I bought it for my wife. She loved it. So all of a sudden, yeah, I might not reach them, but apparently I reach who is buying stuff for them. So it's still the right consumer. And that has been really interesting because it's hard for me to show stats on that, obviously. I can show the stats on who is watching my posts and what I'm putting out there, but I can't show stats on how many of them are buying stuff for their wives, but a lot of the times, the decisions of buying, if it's more expensive stuff, you make the decision together with your spouse, so you kind of get input from both directions. And when it's been other stuff, apparently people like to buy stuff for their wives that they've seen that other girls like. So.
I'm wondering, I'm really struck by how strong your personal brand is. Is there someone that you've thought about or modeled your brand after? And or is there someone you look at as really a North Star for a pro athlete these days?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm sure there's a lot of them that I can't really think about right now. I haven't really modeled after anybody else. It's just basically been progressing as I go. Like my biggest thing was when I started my social channels, it was to show the behind the scenes stuff, like what we were doing, because I knew, like we talked about, you will see photos or videos from the bikes going down track and, things that are happening at the track. But I wanted to make sure we showed the builds. We showed the work that went on in the shop before we left the track. We showed the travels, because obviously in Europe, we traveled all through Europe when we went to races, and people found that kind of fascinating. I tried to show a lot about the hard work that went into getting the money to go racing, but obviously a lot of that still to this day is hard to show, because I can't show when I'm sitting there and having meetings or going over contracts or working on proposals or whatever it might be. But I tried to show that side together with obviously working out. Like when I raced a bike, I had to be in really good physical shape, because when you're going 215 miles per hour and holding on to something and you really, moving your body weight around and kind of using a lot of muscles that you didn't even know you had. I really had to do that. So I showed a lot of that side. And I noticed that the more of my kind of personality I showed, or the more I just was myself, the bigger my following kind of grew. And especially when I started, I didn't like talking to the camera in the beginning. I think that was really cringe, like they say. So it was really strange. But after a while, I got kind of used to it, and I noticed too that like the feedback was really good. A lot of the times after a run, I didn't have time to sit down and edit a video or a post. So what I did was I just throw a video up there when I kind of said that like, hey, we did this happened, this is, and even when I had a crash in 2020 and I went online and I just said, hey, this just happened, but like I'm fine. We're piecing the car or the bike back together, and we're going up for the finals. That was the semi-final round. And I feel like all of that that's kind of what made the brand grow. And now obviously I'm having a lot of fun with it, with editing videos and kind of trying to show my personality in a way where I can have fun with my videos, but also music. Like I like having music. I like, sometimes you use trending audio and so on, but a lot of times it's just my kind of music and kind of showing myself in that way. But I haven't really modeled it from anybody else. It's kind of just been what I like what I like to do or what I like to put out there. And then sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes I edit something that I thought was really cool and then I put it out there and people don't really agree, or it didn't go viral the way you wanted it to. And sometimes it does. But I think that's kind of just part of how social media works as well.
Well, the number one rule for social media is the one video that you love that you think is going to do well will always do the absolute worst. It's guaranteed. And the ones you don't care about at all, just to the moon every single time.
So true. The one you spend most time on, that's the one that's flopping every time. So, yeah.
I do think it's such an awesome time, though, for up-and-coming drivers, because a lot of the old guard got forced into social media or still doesn't even want to do it. And they're just like, I don't want to do it. I just want to do what I've been doing, right? And now people do love people, and they love the brands that people are making. So for someone who's coming up, would you say like, hey, social's going to be super important for you. Then where would you go from there? Is it like social, networking, business acumen, then car? Or like what kind of order would you give a 18-year-old you?
I mean, I did a strange order. I didn't even know I would ever throw my leg over a bike. Like, that was not my plan at all, but that was what I could afford. With my budget, I was looking at a top alcohol dragster, but that was way more expensive than a bike, so we went bike. But for me, I think the most important thing has been obviously social, very, very important. Being able to do that and have fun with it. Because when I started, I didn't have as fun with it. You know, it was more of, oh, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. But I tried to really embrace it and be, you know, posting what I liked. Not really care about, okay, this is what it should be, and today I should post this, it should be this length, it should be that. No, just whatever I feel like was my personality and I liked, I threw it out there. And so far it's been working. Maybe if I had a better strategy, it would have been even bigger. I don't know, but maybe then I would have lost a bit of my personality in it as well. That and then networking, obviously, like you mentioned, for me, that has been kind of key. Even when I was in Europe racing and I wanted to get over here, I kept coming over here for races, coming over here trying to get as many meetings as possible, you know, meeting people, just going to events, because it's really, really hard to get into this world if you don't know people. And even with Joe that I run for right now, I was here in America to meet with another team about, you know, potential something to drive over here. And we had another racer that introduced me to Joe Maynard and just said, hey, I want you to meet my friend Joe Maynard. He's really good. And introduced him, and we sat down and talked, and we started talking about the business side of racing and personality, and just really clicked on that level. And he was not looking to add a race team, but he said he wanted to keep talking, and then eventually decided to create this whole opportunity for me to come over, because he said he wanted to go with talent and next generation and someone that worked on the business side as well, and kind of doing it more of like a partner instead of a hired driver that just comes in and drive. But if I wouldn't have been over here and I wouldn't kept, you know, traveling and going to events and meeting people, I don't know how we would look like right now, because these opportunities don't fall into your lap. I've seen that so much with other drivers that say, oh, I won the championship, but I haven't been offered a ride yet. It's like, yeah, no shit. Like, it just doesn't work that way. It doesn't matter how good you are. I mean, even now when I am here and I'm working at it and people think that, oh, you made it to America, like, aren't you happy? I'm very happy, but this is not like, I want to be out here racing for championships, and I want to be out here for many years, and I want to be out here, you know, winning, and not being out here just grasping to stay alive, basically, to be out here, because right now it's still very much up in the air for next year. So they don't understand kind of how hard you gotta work to first get here and then keep it going, and then always trying to look forward. Because if you kind of start slacking and just focus on driving the race car, that sounds really nice to be able to just focus on driving the race car. But I think if you're in a situation like me where you're dependent on sponsors and funding and all that, you gotta just keep moving forward and keep meeting people and keep putting your brand out there and working hard on that. The race car stuff, obviously, it's important too to get a race car, but if you don't have the money to go get a race car, I was in that position for several years. When I went to school, I couldn't race. I didn't have a race car to race. I had some friends that let me run their Super Comp car every now and then, but I did not have the money to go and place it on a race car. So I tried to work on connections and work on finding money. And then I also think you should have an open mind and think that if you want to run Top Fuel, for example, don't be too struck on that has to be the only thing. Run something else, like whatever opportunity falls in your lap. I mean, I've driven and ridden a lot of other stuff that I never thought I would be in, just because I got the opportunity. And I said, yeah, because it could always open another door somewhere else. And like I said, I never thought I would race bikes. But if I wouldn't have raced bikes, I would never have made it to where I am today. Like, you got to start somewhere. You just got to do something and then work from there.
Ida, I'm thinking about at your age at 31, most F1 racers are washed up and they've been done for 5 years. They've been retired for a decade. But like, you're going to be a success. Obviously, spending an hour with you, I already know you're going to be an amazing success. You're going to do this for a long time. But have you thought about the 40-year runway you have as a NHRA Top Fuel driver? Like, that's how the age of some of our drag racers are. Have you thought about what that means to you and the run you're about to take off on?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that when you see, like, I'm still one of the youngest right now. So, and I think a lot of that has to do with how hard it is to get into it. It's not like in other sports when you progress from, category up, and then it's a natural fit that you're in the top class when you're 20 or something like that. That we have some 20-year-olds that have done Top Fuel, but it's very uncommon, so to say, especially if you're doing it the way I am, when you also have to hustle and find the money to go do it. I think it's so great with drag racing, though, that there's not really an age barrier like that. I mean, we see drivers still at their peak, and they're 60 plus. So I love that fact that I feel like, for my next 10, 15 years, nobody would say, oh my God, she's the oldest in the class. I still have many years in Top Fuel where I can chase a championship and not be seen as the oldest on the grid, and I think that's good. And I think it's a testament to the sport too. Like we talked about, you can be 18-year-old and you can race someone that's 65. You can be a girl racing a guy. You can be, from Europe racing someone in America, whatever it is. Like, it's very inclusive. And I don't think everybody outside of the sport understand how inclusive it is. And we might not do the best job at marketing it either, because we don't care, because that's not what we care about. We care about who wins and how the race car is running and what you're doing on the track, not who you are on the outside in that regard.
We're big on actionable items. So if I'm listening to this and I'm like, yeah, but I'm too small of a company to get involved with something like that. Tell us kind of the scale here. Like, how small can you be to get involved, even on like maybe a 1 race thing or a 2 race thing? Or like, where do you start if you don't want to just give you $1 million, right? Like, if you can't do that now, what's the walk up for some of these small, tiny companies that just are like, that'd be really cool to get involved in. I see the run up. I see 30 plus years of this relationship. What do they do?
I think that there's a lot of different ways to kind of structure a partnership. I mean, I even have partners that are not even on the race car, that only do things with me on social, or even things that I do on their company that's away from the racetrack. I might come to their studio and I can film videos of promoting their products that they use in their marketing. I can come and meet their I'm losing words. English is my second language. I meet their employees basically and like talk to them about, my story, and they can, spend the day with them and do stuff together in that way. We have some sponsors that are, only want to use our hospitality, and they come there and they bring their biggest partners, and we take care of them there and give them, pit tour, and they get to come down with us and watch the race, and we can spend some time together and maybe have a small logo on the car. Some of them do that for a full year, and they come to different races. Some of them might want to just be local to where they are. Sometimes when we race in the California area, we have some sponsors that only want to be there because that's where they do their business. So there's a lot of different opportunities. We have sponsors that are, maybe $5,000, and we're doing a smaller deal for a race where they might not have a big logo on the car, but we are doing something where we can invite them over, or we're doing something on social. And then we have sponsors that might want to do a one race deal. And a one race deal, if we're doing, a full wrap and everything on the car and doing everything together, can be around 150,000, even up above that, depending on how everything is structured. But we can also do a smaller deal where they might do like half a car, or, I think we can normally a deal for a one race depends on between $10,000 and $160,000 per race, but you can also have $160,000 and you are on the car for a whole season, and we're doing different events in different at different tracks. Or you're a company that says that my budget is $15,000. What can we do with that? Well, let's look at where you want to be based. Let's look at where you want to maybe have people come out to the races, and we take care of you in hospitality. Maybe we can put some contracts together for social media. There's a lot of opportunities there. I wouldn't hesitate just because you're a smaller brand right now, or you might not have that budget. I think there's always a way to structure. I don't have a package where it's like, this is what it costs here, this is what it costs there, choose your spot on the car. Everything is customized. So every time I sit down with a potential partner, you obviously look at, where they're based, what their what their plan is, what they're most looking for with the partnership, how we can help them out, and then what their budget is. And, whatever their budget is and what they want out of it and how we can help them, that's how we make a plan for it and make a proposal, not the other way around where we kind of say, hey, this is what it costs and slide them a check.
I mean, that's refreshing. Like I think a lot of people just think, oh, there's no way I could ever get involved with such a thing, and I guess I'll just never do that. But like, it's so cool to hear that, no, you can get involved even on a very small budget number and really see nice returns. So,
and even when we look at it, for example, with like Edelbrock that I worked with in 2023, they were the main sponsor of my car when we won the championship. So it was, we were the Edelbrock team and we had that on the whole car. Obviously, that's a big company that everybody knows about. But just 2 years earlier when we started working together, that was basically on a level where we got parts for products, projects that we were making, and it was a lot lower level of partnership. And that's how it started out. But the more we got to know each other and the more we worked together, I found B2B opportunities for them where we could physically show that this is how much money we're going to make back on the investment of working with, these companies in Europe. And would we have been able to find that opportunity if we wouldn't have started on a smaller level? Probably not, because I would not have known, how do you want to expand in Europe and what are your needs for Europe and what companies could I introduce you guys to? So if we wouldn't have started small, we probably wouldn't have had them as our main sponsor in 2023. So that's also something that could be, good to have in the back of your mind. And maybe you want to get bigger and scale the partnership through the years, but you might not know exactly how to do it yet when you're talking to these companies the first time. You might want to have to grow together in that and realize that you have other connections that you might be able to put together and actually make that money for that company.
yeah, well, it's wild to me. Like, we've been in motorsports. I mean, I've been in it my entire career, so have you basically. And like, you don't really hear the intricacies of this ever. I mean, even at the biggest companies in the world, it's mainly like, oh yeah, here's the price list and we'll pay him this and then that's that. And then we don't know how to measure the return. And
this is how many posts and
Yeah.
this is how big of a logo and this is how many tickets and that's what you sell. Yeah.
yeah,
You
and
see that a lot.
I think people are like, oh, well, okay, then we'll just ignore that. We'll just get involved somewhere else, or we'll just do it and then we can't measure it. And then as soon as the budget tightens up, we're out completely. Like, it's so refreshing to hear, no, there are ways to do it. There's smart people that are doing it these ways. I love all the social parts. I love the lifestyle part of it too, right? Because
The progression is super valuable and I've run some really big brands, but the get to know you phase and then, it worked out. That was really successful. She over-indexed for us. It was a great ROI. What would she want to do more of? How could she sell more of my product? Like, that's a super smart way to go.
That's also why I don't want to lose that connection, because you see a lot of other brands and a lot of other sports too. The driver themselves isn't kind of part of that discussion of how are we going to get ROI for this company, or how are we going to, deliver on this contract. And it's a lot of times in other sports or other motorsports as well. I've seen it, where it's like, hey, you got a social media manager, someone that says you're going to record this video today and that's it. And then, you cross that off a list that you have somewhere. And that's why it was so important for us I want to have that connection with those brands, and all the brands that I brought into JCM Racing when I came on board. I'm still their main point of contact, and I'm still the one that have those meetings. And then obviously we do have our social media manager for JCM that I work tightly together with, and we together look at how can we make deliverables for these brands. Like, how can we make sure that what I promised them is what we're putting out here, and how can we kind of, over deliver on everything we put out there. And I think a lot of the time, you might not work that way, or you don't have that connection with the brands, and people in that position might also change. So you might have a good connection with someone on that brand, and then your person on your company changes and goes somewhere else, and all of a sudden that company might not be as interested in sponsoring because they don't have a connection to you as the driver whose car they're actually on. They had a connection to someone that worked on that company, and I don't want to lose any companies that we work with or any sponsors that way. Like, I want to have that main point of contact, and I want to be able to pick up the phone and call them and ask, like, hey, we're reaching the quarter of this, like this is what we're supposed to do for this video. And I mean, I've had it where we've planned something and then I call them 6 months later and I ask and I said, hey, I'm putting together this video for that detail. And they say, no, screw that. We don't want to do that anymore because that product is going to go out soon. Can we change that? And it's like, yeah, of course we can, but you can have an open dialogue about it. And all of a sudden I knew that they wanted to change this. It wasn't just us putting something out there and they were looking at it and said, oh, damn, that's not going to work for us. But okay, you know, you don't want that. You don't want them to look at something and don't feel like they got the return they wanted. You want them to look at it and feel like that we cared about what they wanted out there, or like we cared about the contract we had with them.
Super smart. Very smart.
What's more nerve-wracking, pulling into the water box or sending a big budget number?
Sending a big budget number. 100%. It's shaken. Yes. Yes.
Good. So that never changes. Okay.
Yeah. No, I would rather pull into the final round against Doug again, like we did on Sunday, than sending those really big budget proposals because I get sweaty. Like
That's awesome. You got anything else?
Just remind folks where we can find more of you and tell us what we got to do to follow you along this trip you're on.
Absolutely. Biggest, I'm on Instagram. So obviously if you search my name, Ida Zetterström, you'll find it. But my handle there is actually Dragsterfia. So long time ago. And then I'm also on Facebook, Ida Zetterström, verified both of those. So make sure that those are the right ones because there's a lot of fake ones out there. So if it's not verified, it's not me. Got a YouTube page, haven't done a lot on it for a while, but back when we raced the championship in Europe, we did blogs from those races. It could be a little fun to look at. And then I got LinkedIn, Ida Zetterström, and then a website, idazetterström.com.
I want to make sure I thank you for driving to Pontiac, Michigan, to be in the studio, to sit with us, to really lay out the business of Top Fuel driving and what it takes to survive. And I want to thank our friend Wes Brown who got us connected. It was great. We did have this scheduled before you went on your tear and wrecked every driver in the class and just tore up Top Fuel this past weekend. So thank you for that.
It was great timing.
We could be a good luck charm. I don't know. It could be us. It's hard to say.
If you schedule with us, things happen. We're going to tell you right now. So get on our books.
Yeah. Well, we got to get off this so we can start talking about an Automotive Advantage little sponsor.
I think we can help this young lady. We can help her.
I think she would be helping us. I don't feel like we would be.
I wanted to make it feel like we were helping her. So
no, it's really her helping us. Yeah, we're not in a position of any authority at this point.
No.
Cool. Well,
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you. That's the pod.